Hi, everyone. I'm Thomas Murray Dawson with Center for Political Education. I'm joining you from the occupied lands of the Ohlone people in the East Bay of California. As always, we encourage all our participants located in the Bay Area to pay their Shumi land tax, which you can do by following the link in the chat. Speaking of that chat, it will be disabled for these calls, except for us to share information with the audience. If you have questions you'd like to get answered during the call, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. In that same toolbar, you can find the CC button to enable closed captioning. We are also grateful to have ASL interpreters on hand throughout this call. On behalf of CPE, Bay Resistance, Arab Resource and Organizing Center, and the Anti-Police Terror Project, thank you for joining the fifth of our weekly PSA calls or Palestine Solidarity announcements. If you're new to PSAs, these calls are a space for us to provide you with weekly updates on what's happening in Palestine, the most recent calls to action, and ways you can join the ongoing solidarity work for Palestine in the Bay Area. We have a lot to cover today. Attacks in Gaza have not relented, and the enforced starvation and deprivation in Gaza is worsening, threatening to claim more lives than even the bombings themselves. The last 2 days have seen the world turn its eyes towards The Hague, where South Africa's compelling case against Israel's genocide has been heard before the ICJ. And despite the seriousness of those proceedings and the dire warnings issued by South Africa's legal team about what could transpire should the ICJ and the world community fail to act, we are also witnessing, as of last night, new attacks by the US and the UK against Yemen, which threaten to further destabilize the situation into a wider war. And of course, we've seen the persistence of direct actions in the US, which will be expanding in scope and scale over the coming days and weeks. We hope you'll stick with us through the hour to hear from our presenters and learn more about how you can get involved. Today's agenda is as follows. First, semantics practitioner Melissa Fan will ground us in a short semantics practice. Next, we'll hear from Kate Sim from No Tech for Apartheid with analysis on conditions in Gaza and recent political developments. Then we'll hear from Dav Baum of American Friends Services Committee, who will provide us with some background and context for what's been happening in Israeli politics. Claire Byard from About Face will then talk briefly about the importance of identifying war profiteers in the Bay Area. And Lily Fassi Haskell will give us an update on the Bay Bridge 78 case and some notes for everyone heading out to the port shutdown for Palestine tomorrow. Finally, Rafielway from APTP will join us again to lay out what's happening this coming week for Reclaim MLK, and I'll close this out with a couple of closing notes on some other actions ahead. Again, thanks for joining us today. Stay engaged, stay resilient in your fight, and let's work together to end the genocide, end the siege, end the occupation, and free Palestine. With that, I'll turn it over to Melissa.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are starting with somatics again because somatics practice allows us to stay in the fight for a free Palestine and for collective liberation for the long run. The images and videos that we are seeing come out of Palestine are beyond horrendous. Rightfully so, these images have a profound effect on our mental, emotional, and spiritual health. That is the normal response to witnessing genocide. And so somatics practice allows us to act in alignment with our values and not from a place of unconscious dysregulation or unconscious trauma. And so for our somatics practice today, we'll be doing some bilateral stimulation. If you were in the first PSA, it is the same practice that we did in that first call. So you can be doing this sitting, standing, or laying down. And once you find yourself in a comfortable position, begin to find your toes Find all 10 of your toes. And if you don't have toes, find the lowest extremity that you do have. And from our toes, moving up through our body all the way to the tip of the head, we will be toggling back and forth between the two sides of our body, paying conscious attention to the left side and then the right side, and going back and forth. So starting from our toes, paying attention to our left big toe. Now the right big toe. And I'm going to speed up the pace a little bit. So right foot, left foot, right ankle, left ankle, right shin, left shin, right knee, left knee, right thigh, left thigh, right hip, left hip, right side of your abdomen, left side of your abdomen, right rib cage, left rib cage, right armpit, left armpit, right shoulder, left shoulder, right side of your neck, left side of your neck, right jaw, left jaw, right cheekbone, left cheekbone, right ear, left ear, right temple, left temple. And now focusing your conscious attention to the very top of your head. And toggling vertically from the top of your head, now bringing your conscious awareness to your toes again. So top of your head to the toes, top of your head to your toes. And one last time, top of your head to your toes. And bilateral stimulation is a practice that has been proven to support mental brain plasticity, brain flexibility, so that when we are viewing these images and the videos, those images and videos don't get stuck in your body. They don't get stuck and frozen in your body and prevent us from being able to take action. And all of the practices that I share are very short. They're less than 5 minutes, and these are practices. So please do them as much as you can so that you can remain embodied, can take care of yourself, and we can continue this fight until Palestine is free. Thank you for practicing with me today.
Thank you, Melissa. Now for an update on the situation on the ground and political developments, we have Kate Sim from No Tech for Apartheid. A reminder to please use the Q&A function to send us your questions. Kate.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. My name is Kate, and I am an organizer with the Tech Workers Coalition, and I'm working with the No Tech for Apartheid campaign. And I'm really honored to be here to be able to share political developments. Okay. Let me see. All right. And then I'll go into what's happening on the ground in Gaza and Palestine, and then end with a note on local activities. So the biggest thing from this week is the International Court of Justice hearing. On the right side, here's a meme from this morning as participants are observing the statement from the Israeli side. So just a quick overview of the International Court of Justice. What is it? It's a UN's principal judicial body for adjudicating disputes between states. It's often seen as quote unquote white man's justice. So there's real skepticism about the efficacy of taking this international legal route. For context, Palestine has been asking for membership since 2009, and they were only granted membership in 2015. That said, this is a historic moment, and this case is being brought to the ICJ by South Africa. And the case is that Israel is committing and failing to prevent genocide. Oftentimes with these cases, genocide is proven retroactively. The historically significant aspect of the current case is that we're trying to prove genocidal intent in the current moment as it is playing out. So procedurally, if the International Court of Justice does find the case to be at least plausibly meeting the scope of the Genocide Convention, and expert Noura Erakat says that it's very likely that this is a very low bar and it'll be very likely met. The court can issue a provisional order to stop further harm. Will this do anything? Yes-ish. So the most significant thing is that it continues to place international pressure to isolate Israel. It also makes a case for the world government leaders to intervene. And it also provides world leaders with the ability to prosecute Israeli individuals in national courts. And most significantly, it creates a foundation for explicitly linking the apartheid regime, Zionism and racism, and genocide. And I know that these words can feel really lofty at the level of international law, but I do want to emphasize just how unprecedented this is. And on the right side here is, again, some of the memes from this morning. The Israeli state side is giving their statement today. And, a lot of people are making memes as we're seeing sort of the horrific genocidal logics and almost laughable continuation of their logics play out again. So here's one person who is doing the Hamas counter during the Israeli statement. So this is, I'm not going to go into detail here, but this is basically like a cheat sheet for understanding Israel's genocidal intent case brought by South Africa. So there are three folds of arguments that try to meet the scope of the Genocide Convention. First is the extent of killing and reproductive violence committed against Palestinians. As the UN General Guterres has said, the current war is being described as a graveyard for children. More Palestinian children were killed in the first 3 weeks in Gaza alone than the total killed in world conflict zones since 2019. And there's also prevention of birth by inflicting violence very intentionally on mothers and infants. As we heard from the statement yesterday, multi-generational families are being killed, giving birth to this new acronym called WC. NSF, wounded child, no surviving families. Second, we're seeing this extent of bodily and mental harm. Surviving Gazans are likely amputees without one or both legs and with burn marks from white phosphorus. There have been 238 plus attacks on healthcare facilities, very intentionally. Attacks have been targeting medical facilities, equipments, and healthcare professionals. There's currently no functioning hospital. The injured are waiting to die slowly and painfully from under the rubbles because there simply is no healthcare professionals and resources to provide them. And finally, there are, again, very intentional efforts to shape the conditions of life in Gaza. This morning, there's been a complete siege. no electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. The aid that is permitted is well below the minimum requirement for humanitarian operations. 93% of Gazan population is facing crisis levels of hunger. And I think this reference point around water is really telling. There's barely 1.5 liters of water per day per person. The emergency threshold is 15 liters and survival threshold is 3 liters. And within the US, the domestic response expected but has been extremely disappointing and disheartening. The statement from Matthew Miller from the White House continues to take the side of Israel. And as we have noticed, mainstream media within the US failed and refused to broadcast the hearing yesterday. But of course, today they are showing this all on the mainstream news channels. And all of this is going on while the war in Gaza is continuing. As of this morning, there were heavy confrontations in southeast of Khan Yunis. This morning in Gaza, there's another communication blackout. Internet and telecom services are cut following Israeli bombardment. Over in West Bank as well, there have been 28 forced arrests, 5,810 total number of detained persons. So we're continuing to see the escalation of attacks in Gaza and Palestine. And most significantly, the US and UK launched airstrikes in Yemen as of last night. And I want to highlight a few things on the left-hand side. We're seeing Genocide Joe very much reproducing the war logics that we've been hearing from Israel. He's arguing that this airstrike is justified in order to protect our peoples, but really he's focused on protecting our trade. And he's claiming that this is justifiable because of the name of self-defense and also for protecting trade. But again, we're seeing, as we see on the second image here, on the left-hand side is a Palestinian child, and on the right is a shipping container. Guess who the UK and US will go to war to defend? So he's calling this as a defensive act, but really it's to protect our shipping lines. And on the right-hand side is a demonstration happening in Yemen to support what's happening in the Red Sea. There will be another demonstration this evening in San Francisco as well. So just really want to call out the kind of economic side of war profiteering from genocide that's underpinning the current moment from the US. And to all of this, internally, I didn't think that bipartisan alignment is going to come in 2014, but Congress is reacting very strongly, and we are seeing bipartisan condemnation of President Biden's decision to go into airstrike. There's a joint statement that 44 countries released along with the US to again justify this as an act of self-defense. On the right-hand side, we're seeing Democrats like Rashida Tlaib and Ro Khanna being very vocal in calling out the president for this decision as constitutional violation. And actually, Republicans like Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene are agreeing. So continues to be a strange moment to witness bipartisan alignment because the president called into an airstrike. And then within the US, we're also seeing the continuation of the discourse around sexual violence. As somebody who spent over a decade working in the issue of sexual violence, this has been really disheartening to see. Wartime sexual violence is absolutely a thing. It functions as a tactical weapon in ways that many non-sexual violence tactics are used. However, what we are seeing based on the New York Times coverage in December 2018 is an example of colonial feminism, which is the appropriation of women's rights, particularly around sexual violence, in service of empire. It vilifies and justifies the policing and punishment and disciplining of men of color. We know this from various examples in history, like Emmett Till in the US, Vincent Chin, and Rasen Chanda, which is a miscegenation law during Nazi Germany. And it also continues to erase the very legitimate and real sexual violence against boys and men that we are seeing in Palestine. And now with all of these events happening around the world, we come back to Bay Area. We have quite a bit to celebrate and some wins to claim. So most excitingly, earlier this week, San Francisco became the largest city in the US to call for an immediate ceasefire. So this resolution was introduced and co-sponsored by Supervisors Preston and Ronan back in December. There was historic public comment and participation from over 2,000 San Francisco residents over the course of 7 hours. Earlier this week, the Rules Committee reviewed racist and unbalanced amendments by Dorsey, and the resolution itself passed with a supermajority vote of 8-3 on Tuesday. So this means that the mayor cannot make any amendments. And actually, many supervisors who voted in favor of the resolution are facing significant political consequences as a result, even though they're just listening to their constituents and doing what's right. So if you have a moment, please take a moment to thank the supervisors at this link, bit.ly/GazaSF. And second, we have an exciting event action coming tomorrow. So the Block the Boat action is coming back for port shutdown tomorrow. Just want to highlight that this is the same ship from October, and this military vessel is the one that was also sent for military shipping to Iraq and Afghanistan in the past. And also with what's happening in Yemen, we can clearly see the kind of the significance of the shipping line in enabling and facilitating war profiteering. So if you're able to, we need as many people as possible. I know 5 a.m. is really rough, but come join us at West Oakland BART Station. There will be shuttles available from 5 a.m. Bike contingents are invited to bring their bikes as well. And for updates, please make sure to text Gaza to 833-633-0604. And finally, I want to end with some actions that are coming up. There's an emergency protest this evening at 5 p.m. in San Francisco Federal Building to show our solidarity with Yemen and call for a ceasing of the bombing of Yemen. Bay Bridge action is very much ongoing. You can find more information at bit.ly/baybridge78. And next week is the APTP's Week of Action to reclaim Martin Luther King's radical legacy, starting Sunday. And finally, if you're not familiar, there's a calendar on AROC website of all Bay Area activities that you can find at bit.ly/Gaza events. And for this PSA, you can text the same number, text PSA to the same number to stay informed. I know that was a breeze, but I will pause there and hand it back to the facilitators.
Thank you, Kate. Another reminder just to please use the Q&A function to send us your questions. And now we're honored to hear from Bam with some background and recent developments in Israeli politics.
Yeah, thank you. Waiting to be highlighted. So I don't know how far you have been tracking what's going on in Israel. On some level, it's very similar to the US. On another, it is actually very, very dissimilar. So as a way of background, ever since October 7, the Israeli public as a whole was in a state of, I say, shock or even collective psychosis, you may say, with almost 14,000 people killed over the course of a day and almost 5,000 people injured, with dozens of rapes and torture, and the stories from October 7 keep echoing in Israeli news ever since. So in the Israeli collective psyche, in a way, October 7 is not over. And it is done so, of course, on purpose by media and government propaganda. So in a very deep sense of the word, it's a small country. Everybody knows somebody who was taken hostage or was injured. Definitely all families of Jewish Israelis have soldiers in Gaza right now, or in the north with Lebanon and Syria. It's not business as usual. So we cannot imagine life in Israel being business as usual. There's a little bit of an uplifting of that dread over the last week or so, when thousands of soldiers are coming back home from their service because Israel has gone into the third phase of its attack, according to what it says and what it tries to explain to the US. Hopefully meaning a reduction, definitely a reduction of forces on the ground, but maybe also a reduction of violence, who knows. At the same time, Israelis have been still getting continuous news and of attacks from the outside. The attacks from Gaza have been continuous until I think last Tuesday was also a barrage of rockets from Gaza. And from the north as well, from Lebanon, there are rockets coming in. So they constantly feel like they are under attack. The entire population near the north border and near the south border has been evacuated. They are internally displaced and living in hotels in the center of the country. There are 120,000 such internally displaced people. I know these numbers don't mean much if you compare it to what's happening with genocide in Gaza, but for Israelis, this is their news, this is what they see, this is what they know, and they know very little about what's happening in Gaza. And what they actually know about what's going on in Gaza is usually disinformation and lies. So I think that's why what's happening in the last couple of days with the appeal of South Africa to the International Court of Justice is actually groundbreaking, because many Israelis hear for the first time the full charge against Israel for genocide, if they are willing to listen to it. It's not that they couldn't watch it online or watch Al Jazeera, but this is different because it is much harder to dismiss it all as propaganda, even though they do try. It's also deeply shameful, I think, for the liberal camp in Israel to be brought to the International Court of Justice for genocide after they pride Israel of or Jewish intellectuals to bringing forth the International Convention Against Genocide after World War II. Another thing that's happening since October 7 is huge repression inside Israel. New legislation against anything from consumption of terrorist materials, which would include reading Hamas websites, to arbitrary arrests and repression and threats by internal security officers against anyone who would post anything on social media that is sympathetic with Gaza. Or there was just recently a school manager that was suspended because she posted something saying in Gaza, there are also children and old people in Gaza, something like that, very, very innocent. It is doubly so for Palestinians inside 48. In fact, I know of people who delete their social media accounts before leaving the house for fear of getting stopped, pulled over by police who want to look at their social media account and see if they posted a green heart. A green heart might be cause enough to be arrested for support of Hamas. Demonstrations, we see more and more demonstrations against the war happening inside 48. In the first few weeks, it was completely disallowed. First, I think over a month, it was completely disallowed. People who tried to stand, even just standing with like a band on their mouth saying, protesting against the inability to speak, even them were severely attacked by police and arrested. People ended up in hospital after doing that. Now there is a little bit more freedom, still not for Palestinians inside 48, more so for the Jewish-led coalitions. But still, there was supposed to be a big rally against the war tomorrow in Haifa, and it was banned by the police. In general, even vigils that do not require any kind of police license are disallowed now. So that means that also activists receive phone calls, threatening phone calls, or even visits from the internal security forces, threatening them not to hold demonstrations and so on. If I go to a more national scale, just like in the US, there is a deep divide, 50-50 in Israeli politics. between the fundamentalist religious right on the one hand, and the what's called the center, which is a nationalistic, liberal, capitalist, militaristic, I don't know, they call themselves liberals. They both formed a national unity government shortly after October 7, led by Benjamin Netanyahu, which was unthinkable until that moment because there was such a rift in Israeli politics, just like here. As you can imagine, both sides, of course, support the genocide in Gaza and put out very strong statements that are genocidal in effect. The third part that is not mentioned here are, of course, the Palestinians who live inside 48. They make out 20% of the population of the country, and they have their own parties in the Israeli government, in the Israeli parliament, not in the government. And in fact, 3 of the members of Knesset representing Palestinian parties, one of them Jewish Israeli, were suspended over the last few months just for speaking out for Gaza. They're suspended for short terms. One of them is back, one isn't. And one of them who just signed a petition, an Israeli petition in support of the South African plea to the ICJ, is probably going to be impeached for that under the claim of support of terrorism, incitement to violence, and so on. Another thing about the general atmosphere in Israel, it's fear and it's violence. There are new security squads all around the country where people are armed with automatic weapons. About 600 such security squads. The police is handing out automatic guns to volunteers who are willing to patrol cities all around the country, not just settlements. And as you can imagine, these citizens are mostly people who want to use weapons against Palestinians, creating a very, very scary environment out in the street. Almost everybody's carrying a gun. There are about 64,000 new permits for gun carrying. That is on top of these security squads that are armed by police. And they're aiming to reach 400,000 new permits for people. That's about 3 times the permits in the country today. So Israel, to begin with, was a highly armed society, but now we're talking about an explosive situation ripe for civil war at any moment. And the last point, maybe positive, maybe negative, I don't know. I was asked to talk about the political situation, whatever that is. I just wanted to be clear. It's clear, I think, that Israelis view what happened as a total failure of their own government, including all staunch supporters of Bibi Netanyahu see him today as a failure. He's hanging on to office and he's continuing the war at all costs because otherwise he might find himself in prison. That is also a similarity to US politics, I might add. But that means that he has the lowest approval ratings of all time, and nobody doubts that this is probably his last term in office. We don't know who will replace him and if that would be any better. And I will end here.
Thank you so much for this invaluable insight into what has been happening inside Israel as this military campaign has been prosecuted and this genocide is ongoing. We are now gonna, give me 1 second. One thing about the claims of complicity that we've been talking about at the International Criminal Court is the other side of it is the war profiteering. And we know that anti-war organizers across the globe have been exposing the central complicity of war profiteers in the genocide in Gaza. And so to help us understand a little bit more about war profiteering and especially war profiteering here in the Bay Area, we're now joined by Claire Byard of About Face and CPE's anti-war working. Thanks, Claire.
Hi, am I unmuted?
You are.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Thank you, Thomas. So we are responding to the call of the Palestinian General Federation of Trade Unions. You remember in October, they asked workers around the world to refuse to build weapons destined for Israel, refuse to transport weapons, and to take action against complicit companies. And since they put out that call in the last 90 days, Israel has dropped 65,000 tons of ammunition on Gaza, more than 3 times the power of the atomic bomb dropped by the US on Hiroshima in World War II. And we have a very particular role in the Bay Area within this global call to stop arming Israel. So some things we know the role of US weapons and advanced military technology as one element of US military support continues to be pivotal for Israel's occupation forces. The US is by far the biggest supplier of military aid to Israel, and most of that aid is in the form of weapons grants. More than 80% of Israel's weapons imports are coming from the US. And last year, that was $38 billion from the US, which is 16% of Israel's military budget. So in the Bay, we have access to facilities of many of the key war profiteer companies. And by that, I mean both traditional arms manufacturers and also the tech companies who are developing new methods of war. So the historic top 5 weapons contractors, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing, General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman, you might recognize some of these names. They've been splitting over $100 billion a year in Pentagon contracts, taxpayer money. They all have offices, subsidiaries in the Bay. Annie is going to drop a slide that has a non-comprehensive but useful map just to take a look at. These are the arms dealers that make warplanes, warships, attack helicopters, rocket systems, surveillance tech, bombs, Iron Dome missiles, remote operated weaponry. And these companies have an interlocking web with each other and with the Pentagon. They have a real revolving door of personnel of the people who run them and who run State departments, who run our war policy. But they also collaborate with each other on joint projects, development, products. And just one example, you see in the East Bay, there's L3 Harris, so who built their name off border technologies of violence. They make components for a kit which is used on Boeing bombs to turn unguided air-to-ground bombs into GPS-guided precision bombs. They make weapons release systems for the F-35 warplanes that Lockheed Martin makes. They make management systems for the Israeli Navy's primary warships, which are built by Northrop Grumman. So all of these parts are contributing to the brutality and the pace of what's happening. But here in the Bay, this is a military AI and military tech hotbed here. So the importance of looking at the software as well as the hardware. Right now is the first time that AI-generated targets are being rolled out on a large scale in a military operation. Israeli forces are using an AI system they call the Gospel, that is just a few years old, to generate targets 50 times faster than humans can come up with them. And a former Israeli intelligence officer said that this Gospel, it basically creates a mass assassination factory, is what we're seeing. But that mass aggregation of data is using software and systems where a lot of it is developed here in Silicon Valley. When we look at big tech, we can look, Amazon with over 350 military contracts, working with Google, who has over 250 military contracts, working together on Project Nimbus, which you've heard about through No Tech for Apartheid's work calling for an end to it. It's $1 billion apartheid tech program. Google was forced from worker pressure and public pressure in 2018 to drop a previous project called Maven that was a project with the Department of Defense using artificial intelligence for drones. When they dropped it, it got picked up by Palantir, conveniently located in Palo Alto. Palantir was founded using CIA money. They make data mining tools for ICE as well as the DoD. We have so many of these companies here. As you saw on that map, which will get you the link to that and to a more comprehensive list of addresses. We have the 7th largest weapons manufacturer in San Jose making components for all of these weapon systems. And we also have some of the more under the radar companies like Skydio in San Mateo, who are the leading manufacturer of AI-driven, what they call autonomous tech drones. They were emailed on October 7th by Israel saying, send us 100 drones immediately. We have no shortage of key players here who are materially enabling this genocide, and we need to expand our interventions. The Secretary of Defense, Austin, in October said that US security to Israel will flow in, quote unquote, at the speed of war. So we're seeing this unprecedented pace of how fast the weapons are going there. The Biden regime is using backdoor methods to send more weaponry with less oversight. In December, Blinken invoked this pretty rare Emergency Authority Act to approve the immediate sale of 14,000 tank munitions. And the invocation of that emergency authority prevents Congress from reviewing or blocking that sale. So they are working on multiple fronts to reduce congressional oversight and accountability. So for us, taking the fight directly to the profiteers is vital. And this is a moment of resurgent action nationally. Campaigns against companies, including Raytheon and Boeing, being led particularly by youth, like the powerful anti-militarist organization Dissenters. There's global networks that have been researching and challenging these profiteers for decades. And we have a history of successes against war profiteers. As with BDS, smart, sustained campaigns can make gains. Look at the multi-year sustained campaign to get General Electric out of building nuclear weapons, which won in the 90s with millions of people being involved in mass boycotts. And what I just want to say around the potential for connecting struggles here is it's enormous. You could hear that in the lists of weaponry, both where these weapons and technologies are being used against Palestinians and also people in Yemen, Syria, Kashmir, the Philippines, West Papua, at the US-Mexico border. And also this enormous redistribution of wealth to the ruling class, that more than half of the unbelievably massive US military budget goes to for-profit companies. So that's $400 billion of taxes going to them. So workers can refuse to develop new military technologies, refuse to build or transport. They can whistleblow. Community can do many things to exert pressure, to raise the social and financial cost, to make their profit model untenable. And we're going to give you a couple more links for more detailed information on these companies, and also you can email us for more info. The AFSC has a great list of companies that are profiting, particularly in this current wave of genocide. There is a comprehensive database at Tech Inquiry where you can pull up all the information you need around military tech contracts. And there is a not fully comprehensive, but very useful map of Bay Area addresses attached to that map that you saw earlier. So let's be in touch. Let's make this happen. Let's build it up.
Thanks, Claire, for that excellent presentation of that thorough research and mapping of war profiteers in the Bay Area. We've dropped a lot of links in the chat, and a reminder that if you were unable to sort of get to all those links in the course of the webinar, we will provide those links in the post webinar email. And now to provide us with an update, a little bit more information on the Bay Bridge 78 case and some more information on tomorrow's action, we have Lily.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Thomas. And again, my name's Lily. I'm with the Arab Resource and Organizing Center. Here to just give a couple more updates about some upcoming actions. Kate had also, thanks Kate, mentioned some of these in the beginning in the introduction. And thank you, Claire, for listing out and naming how we can take interventions around some of these war profiteers and warmongers here in the Bay Area. You know, as we continue to see the absolute devastation of this genocide, we know that our actions do make a difference historically, and we're here in coming up to the week of MLK legacy actions. So thinking about the connections with anti-imperialism and also the struggles here at home. I'm going to share a few slides with y'all. Sorry, just 1 second. Okay, can folks see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, a couple of things coming up. So I am with the Bay Bridge 78. So again, 78 protesters arrested on the Bay Bridge in November, stopping business as usual, halting traffic to say ceasefire now and an end to this genocide. We are moving forward with pressing the district attorney to drop the charges. So DA Jenkins is continuing to pursue charges against all of the protesters who were arrested that day on the bridge, including 5 misdemeanor charges for everyone, including false imprisonment. So really trumped up charges for civil disobedience. And we know that that we'll continue to stand up. We'll continue to stand up on the side of justice, and that will include a diversity of tactics. And so we also need to take a strong stand to make sure this level of political repression doesn't move forward, right? Because our assessment and our analysis is that Jenkins is trying to put forward an image of San Francisco in terms of policing and repression, and the efforts that also London Breed is working and moving forward to sort of create a new neoliberal version of San Francisco, right? And this includes policing of political protest. And so we also saw more repression happening at the December 23rd action that happened at Union Square as well, right? So with this case against the 78, we see that not only as needing to defend those of us who are in the group of 78, but also making sure that DA Jenkins knows that she cannot criminalize this type of action, but that this type of action is really speaking to the legacy of San Francisco, where we have always stood up against injustice. And that has looked like, you know, a multiracial, internationalist, immigrant community, a disabled community, a queer community, a gender nonconforming community united together in solidarity against injustice locally as well as internationally. So coming up, our charges are moving forward on February 1st and 2nd, and there will be calls to attend the court proceedings. But we were hoping and trying to push as hard as possible to try to have the charges dropped before then. So coming up next week, we have a rally at the DA's office on January 17th. And that's at 10 a.m. We are also, you know, with that rally, we're making sure that the call is to drop the charges, but not forgetting what brought us here in the first place, which is ceasefire now, free Palestine, and that we as Bay Area residents have a responsibility to that. Additionally, we are asking organizations in San Francisco and beyond to sign a letter to DA Jenkins to support dropping the charges. You'll see the link in the chat. We already have over 75 organizations signed on, including these San Francisco organizations you see on the slide, as well as a number of Bay Area and national organizations that are signed on. So thank you very much if your organization has signed on. If you have not yet, we encourage you to do so. And if you are an individual and not within an organization, one, we hope that you join an organization where you can continue to get involved. And then two, you can still take action on this particular cause. So we're encouraging people to call the DA and to email the DA and to share this information on social media or with your friends and loved ones. So you can also, you don't have to call just once. So if you've already called or emailed, that's great, but you can continue to call and email. The goal here is to put as much pressure as possible and to continue to raise the issue. Again, not just for the 78, but for anyone who may be prosecuted in the future for our political action, and to say that we want a different narrative in terms of stopping policing of political action, such as this. So that's the Bay Bridge 78. I want to shift a little bit to tomorrow. So tomorrow we have the port shut down for Palestine. And first, just to say a little bit about why we're there shutting down the port. So we know, we've heard about in the introduction, and we know we're following minute by minute the devastation in Gaza. Locally, people have taken action that's looked like a diversity of tactics and civil disobedience, and also local action by governments. San Francisco, Oakland, Richmond have taken action. And yet the Port of Oakland continues to be one of the largest ports on the West Coast. As Claire mentioned, we have all of these war profiteers here locally. And so we know that ships are coming and going, carrying weapons that are used not just in Israel, but in other places globally to support oppression of indigenous communities. And so, and likewise, we know, we have seen with the weapons ship Orlando that goes directly to supporting Israeli genocide of Palestinians. So as far as this port action, the Orlando is coming back to port. And while we are not directly stopping that ship, we are calling folks out to shut down the port, to say no business as usual. We will not allow our local economy to profit off of war, to profit off of genocide. And this is in a long history and tradition of shutting down ports and other key economic interests and in boycott, divestment, and sanctions tradition and civil disobedience. So this was from the last port action. Tomorrow we'll be outside the port, and folks will be showing up at 5 a.m. at West Oakland BART station. Shuttles will take you to the port. Again, this is a shutdown to say no business as usual in Oakland. And we're calling people to picket starting at 5 a.m. And our goal is to stop the morning shift so that workers will not be able to offload those ships. We are planning for afternoon action potentially, and so that timing will be announced. Please text Gaza to 833-633-0604, and then you can get the updates. But with the afternoon action, if that's called, it will also be a meetup at West Oakland BART station as well. We'll be running shuttles from there throughout the morning and potentially into the afternoon. So you're welcome to either drive and park there. Please try to carpool or show up on a bike, and we'll have some bike brigades that will come through as well. So just to wrap up a couple of things. So port shutdown tomorrow, Sunday, the West Coast National March on Washington. We have APTP. There'll be announcements about that right after this. And then other actions coming up for the week, Tuesday and Wednesday as well. So stay tuned, stay engaged, and let's do all that we can.
Thank you, Lily. And before we close out, we want to welcome Refugee from APTP to walk us through the big week of action for Reclaim MLK this coming week, which starts on Sunday.
Yes. Hi, folks. As was mentioned, the week of action is kicking off early. We'll be out that port shutdown tomorrow morning. Look forward to seeing you all then. Folks can continue to follow the actions that are being added to the week of action on APTP's website. And shout out to Annie, who's been putting links into the chat. I'm sure that will be coming soon. You can see there that there will be a youth build tomorrow as well for young people at the Youth Together office for folks to join, preparing for the week of action. There'll be an Artists Against Genocide event happening in Sunday in San Francisco, where Kat Brooks, our director, will be speaking. And then, of course, Mondays, the big march, our 10th annual Reclaim MLK's Radical Legacy March, which will also be an all-day healing village. And so join us for the day for the healing village, and many folks who will have contingents for the march. Tuesday, we'll be at West Oakland BART Station talking to community about our Safe Transit Saves Lives campaign, and getting their input. And then Surge that evening will be having Showing Up for Racial Justice, a event calling on white folks to reconsider their relationship with police. That'll be an online event. You can find that link on the site as well. Wednesday, we'll have a town hall for our Defund OPD campaign, where folks can hear from community partners about the work that they've been doing around public safety, and we'll hear some calls to action for our youth. That same evening, our Sacramento counterpart will be holding a film screening in Town Hall, which will be hybrid, so folks can also join that virtually. We'll be holding a cop watch training from the People's House, 893 Willow Street, a hybrid training Thursday evening. Surge will be waking up real early on Friday morning, doing some outreach to community at Rockridge BART. Folks can join. Then that evening, we'll have both an MH First training that'll be hybrid, mental health first program on police alternative to mental health crisis. And then also a resource giveaway and a healing justice offering happening at the People's House. That same evening at Eastside Arts Alliance in the East, folks will be doing a Poets for Palestine participatory poetry reading. I encourage folks to join. Then Saturday, we'll be having a APTP fundraiser come through and support us in continuing this work. Sunday, we're partnered with some of our disability justice comrades doing a Disability Justice's Beloved Community event at the Ed Roberts campus right off of Ashby BART in Berkeley. Please join us for that. It's also a hybrid event, so you can register to join us in person or join us online, or we'll have a full program. Monday, the 22nd, there's going to be a play artistic offering from the BAM House that we're in collaboration with. So you can see the week's extended. And even beyond the week of action, I just want to shout out an upcoming event that'll be January 28th. Not yet reflected on the calendar. That'll be an offering from folks in the Stop Cop City organizing. As folks may know, San Pablo is trying to build a cop campus, and many of the ways that the state manipulates technology that was talked about earlier will be highlighted. It'll be a connecting Palestine and COP campus efforts and the ways that the state is colluding event. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafulwe, and thank you for all of the folks who've stayed with us. I have two final announcements that are just two important quick things to mention. First, next week's PSA will be dedicated to the DCI Palestine v. Biden case. It will be before an Oakland federal court on January 26th, and we hope to have the legal team, some plaintiffs, and other supporters on hand to discuss it in more detail and what to expect in court that day. And relatedly, please save the date for January 26th and that morning, so you can join our We Charge Genocide Court Watch and rally at Oscar Grant Plaza at 9 a.m. that Friday. It will be an International Day of Action, and we're dropping a link now, and it'll be included in the post PSA email. So again, thank you all for being part of today's call, and for all of our speakers and presenters, and for our ASL interpreters. Please stay active, stay engaged, and let's free Palestine. Take care.